thank you. I wanted to have us just go over the agenda, so you all should have this sheet right here. And what we're going to do today is have welcome and introductions, and then Carmen's going to speak, and then we will open with the moderators, who are Barbara and me. We will be asking Carmen a lead-off question, and then we want to have you all ask Carmen questions, because that's the best way, we think, for Carmen to get to know us, what our issues are, and for us to get to know Carmen. So we ran it by the executive committee of the Democratic Town Committee, and they said, oh, well, most of the time for questions. So here we are with questions. And so we will go through that. Then Carmen will speak for about 5 minutes or so, telling you some things about himself, and then we'll have the questions. And the Lincoln Democratic Town Committee, who is sponsoring this, is both a recognized town committee, and of course there is also the Republican Town Committee. And we're also a grassroots organization, and we welcome everyone to work with us. We have sign-ups over there asking if you'd like to be an associate member, or if you would like to work on projects, or if you'd like to be on our email list. We hope if you haven't signed, you will. And our committee, some of the things our committees do is that we do calls to action, and we will be sending Representative Gentile some of our calls to action on the issues that we voted on as our top issues. And we support candidates from the state and national level. And we do not support, as a committee, local candidates, because Lincoln politics have been nonpartisan, and having it stay nonpartisan is very, very important to us. Individuals can support, but the Democratic Town Committee doesn't. We do have some people from boards here. The moderator I know is here. Could you just raise your hand? Thank you. And selectmen, thank you. And our people from the planning board here? Oh, great, thank you. And school committee and conservation commission. Oh, great. And also we wanted to have the candidates who are running for local positions to just stand up. Kim, I know you were running for Select.
Hi, I'm
Great.
Father.
And let's see, and then we have school committee. Are you still here? I know you. Oh, great.
I'm Bettina.
And Bettina is here. And there is two more people running for school committee, but they are not here. Oh. And then I'm talking about Lincoln School Committee. And for the Lincoln Sudbury, we have, I know Robbie is here. And Robbie is wearing 2 hats today. He is a legislative aide for Carmen, and he is also running for school committee. He lives in Sudbury. So it's wonderful to have you all here.
I'm running.
Oh, Sarah. Yes, Sarah is right. Thank you, Sarah. I had it in my mind, but I didn't write it down. Oh yes, then you're running for planning board. Yes. So is there anyone else who's running that I have omitted? Okay, great. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for serving on town boards. Thank you for running. And now back to Barbara.
And now really to the main feature of the day, I'd like to say a couple of words about Carmine Gentile, who is our new representative. And as you know, he grew up in Watertown, has a BA from Tufts and a law degree from Suffolk University Law School. He's been a practicing lawyer for at least 30 years, I think he said, and has concentrated a lot on family issues, small business, and sort of local concerns. If you go on the website and look under his page, you will be astonished with the amount of community service and activity that he's been involved in. I hope you'll mention it, at least mention it while he's here, because he's worked with adults, he's worked with children, he's worked across a variety of organizations. It's really very impressive. And he also has some issues for which he's put in a huge amount of effort, gender violence being one, Citizens United, opposed to Citizens United being another. There have been some really important issues. So we hope he'll give us a taste of who he is and what he's like and what his concerns are, and then we'll open it up and ask a couple questions ourselves, Joan and I, and then open it to all of you. And I know that you all have things to ask. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Barbara, and thank you, John. Great introduction, thank you. Yeah, so my name is Carmine Gentile. I am now your state representative for Precinct 1, but really I look at all of Lincoln. And Alice Peisch and I, we've worked together for the last 8 years on a number of matters, and we look forward to working together to serve Lincoln and all the residents of Lincoln. So I'll tell you a little bit more about myself. I have lived in Sudbury for over 40 years, and I am active. I got active in local town government. I'm still active. I'm on the Council on Aging in Sudbury. I'm also chair of the Sudbury Housing Trust, and also a member of the White Ribbon Committee of the Sudbury, Wayland, Lincoln Domestic Violence Roundtable, and still active in my Boy Scout troop. You know, it's really useful to be active at the local level because it informs action at the state level and the national level. And we're really fortunate in Massachusetts. You know, we all work together. I mean, I have a very good relationship with my two congresswomen and both of our U.S. senators. So, you know, on occasion, something, you know, I'll come across something at the local level and not only talk it up and work on it at the state level, but reach out to one of our congresswomen and to a senator, and it's helpful. So I've been in the House for 8 years now, and I've enjoyed every year. I'm looking forward to the next 2 years. I have interests in education and in healthcare and housing. You name it, you know, most areas of life I have an interest in. But you know, we need at least 200,000 more housing units yesterday in the Commonwealth, and so there will be action on that. We formed Mike Conley in the House and I can't recall the senator and the Senate. We formed a housing caucus, already 30 members, and I know that Governor Healy and leadership in both the House and the Senate are interested in working on that. So you had said 5 minutes, so hopefully getting close to the 5-minute mark. I filed every year, every 2 years when the session starts, we have in the House, we have about 2 weeks to file our legislation. Our deadline was yesterday. I filed 39 bills. Actually, Robbie mechanically, this is the first time I've done most of them or all of them myself. Robbie did the mechanics. So 30 of them are have statewide impact, and nine are local home rule bills. For example, the bill authorizing Lincoln to establish a means-tested senior citizen property tax exemption, and the Lincoln bill to establish a fee for checkout bags. Incidentally, that senior tax needs-based tax exemption, that really models a bill that we enacted that we got through the town of Sudbury some years ago. And one of the two leading proponents of that, the Sudbury effort, was Dave Levington, who lives in Lincoln.
Yes.
At
He was
the
on
time,
our
he lived in
committee.
Sudbury. What's that?
He was on our committee to work on this.
There you are.
Yep.
So,
And he's a member of the Democratic Town Committee also.
okay, just kidding. Yeah, excellent. And yeah, I visited Dave recently. Over at the Commons where he lives, and we had dinner with him and spoke to some of the folks there. So I'm also trying to, one of the bills I have before the legislature is the bill to enable cities and towns to do this without having to go to the legislature for approval. You know, basically, in a town, the town meeting would vote to do it, or in a city, the city council would vote. And then every 3 years, they'd have to revisit it and say, yes, if you want to continue, we'll vote to continue. If not, it would expire. So this year, you know, I filed bills for education, environmental bills, public health bills, veteran bill, you know, different areas. And I guess that'll probably come up in the questions, and it'll take me more than I've already done my 5 minutes.
That was going to be our first question. What are your legislative issues? So.
Oh, okay, there you go. Great minds think alike.
Which among those not working at all?
No, I don't know. No.
We'll give it to Travis.
So, you know, I think education is the greatest investment we can make. I mean, we have to, people have to have food, you know, and I'm a member of the food caucus because there is too many people in the Commonwealth, and even in the most well-to-do towns that are food challenged. And so, you know, that's important, but, and education. On education, you know, the great interest, and I think in this session, we will be, I think we'll be subsidizing and doing things so that people are able to get childcare for their, you know, I remember being in Medford a few years ago with Catherine Clark and Nancy Pelosi and our two other congresswomen and Lori Trahan and
Ayanna Pressley.
yeah, I think, I'm trying to remember if she was there or she'd been elected yet. And there were at least 3 of them. Presley would have been there if she was already elected. She was elected. And Nancy Pelosi was talking about legislation so that anyone who was making $100,000 or less would only have to pay 7% of their child care expenses. And I remember Catherine Clark talking about, she may have been on that occasion or another occasion, she talked about, you know, she was at a point in her career where she might have been a state senator at that time, or not, maybe she wasn't even in the legislature at that time, I don't recall. But she was at a point in her career where she was working, but her income was only equal to her child care expense. And she said that, you know, she and her husband sat down and said, well, you know, should I just stay home with the kids or should I keep working? Well, thank God it decided that she should keep working outside the house. Because now, you know, she's done such wonderful things in the interim, and she promises to do terrific things in Washington for us in the future. So Massachusetts has the, well, it's not an honor. Massachusetts is in last place as far as child care costs. We are the highest cost for child care in the United States. I mean, people are spending, my son-in-law, my daughter, and my son-in-law pay probably $20,000 a year. That's a 2-year-old, 2.5-year-old to go to daycare 5 days a week. And so I think there's a commitment to better that situation. And we already started to do that in the last session. 6 months ago, we passed legislation to basically pay the child care expense of child care teachers. I don't know that that's gotten out yet and been put in effect, because I talked to a daycare provider recently and asked if her teachers had taken advantage of it. She didn't know about it. She said she had 2 teachers who had small children that they took care of for free at the daycare. I said, well, we need to find out about this program and get that income. So what happens when legislation goes through is it has to be implemented by the administration, by the governor. It takes months and months and months for them to write the regulations and do this and that and get it done. So, you know, other.
So maybe we could open
Yeah,
it.
go ahead. Yeah, we'll open it. Go ahead.
Is Travis here? Travis, could you see if you could get this to work, and then people can have it in the audience? Yeah. Now, questions from the audience, and we'll hope to circulate a different mic, and if not, we'll do
We have
this
a
one.
hand up right here.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
Give her that one.
Thanks, Carmen.
Thank you for being here, Carmen. Jennifer Glass on the select board. And I have just spent the past 2 days at the Mass Municipal Association conference. Governor Healy was there, Lieutenant Governor Driscoll. We heard from Ed Markey this morning. It was very inspiring, and I came away kind of with two big pieces from this. One is housing and infrastructure, housing and infrastructure, housing and infrastructure. Very high on everybody's list. And the other is just this incredible once in a generation opportunity we have of federal funding, state funding, kind of the imagery was like the fire hose is on, and you know, here is this amazing opportunity. So I came away with this sense of urgency to kind of best understand how we work with you, do, you know, kind of pull our legislative team together? Do we work with all of our towns that you work with to sort of get together and prioritize sort of what's the best way for us to advocate and harness this incredible opportunity?
For housing.
All of it. I mean, there's infrastructure, I mean, there's money for EVs, there's money for housing, there's money for, you know, water pipes, just all of it kind of, it's so overwhelming in some ways and so exciting. Like, what's the best way to begin?
So I think, great question. I don't think this is on. Great question. So I think the best way to get the most benefit is in a town for Lincoln. I think if the town itself has priorities, if you articulate, or if you tell me what those priorities are and say, this is what we'd really like to have happen, this is what we're looking for, that's really helpful to me. You'd be surprised to learn that sometimes towns don't reach out to their representatives or senators and tell them. I mean, I've had situations where I send a letter out to one of the, in the last session was 4 towns, 4 municipalities. I'd send a letter, I'd send an email out to the town manager and say, gee, have some earmarks, have an occasion to get some earmarks, to get some money for, and you look at your life and get no response. Send out a second, no response. In a situation like that, I feel, I'm representing that town, so especially, I say, well, what did they use? And I ask for something, get something, and they're very grateful. But really to be proactive and say, well, gee, we really would like to build 5 units of housing, or we really would like to deal with the people's problem that we have. We really, things that you have, and say, well, this is what we really could use some state money for, some federal money for. If you make it really clear to me, if you prioritize and say, well, this is our first priority, that's really helpful. Now, beyond that, I'm sure that Lincoln is a part of a regional group with
MAPC.
MAPC.
Yep.
And so, if you're part of a regional group or you're partnering with another town or towns on a project, then it's good for that group to reach out and say, gee, these are our priorities. I think that's the way to approach it.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Jim. Other questions? Other questions, yeah.
Hi, Laura Berland, and I wanted to ask you about 2 bills concerning the criminal legal system. 2 bills were filed last year. One was the prison moratorium bill, and the other was no-cost calls for incarcerated folks. They both, I believe, passed, but were vetoed by the governor. But then the time ran out for the legislature to override the veto. So I wonder if you support these bills, and if so, what you could do to help get them passed.
But before that, Laura, could you explain what the prison moratorium is?
Oh, sure, sorry. So the prison moratorium bill would basically put a 5-year moratorium on building any new prisons in Massachusetts. It would not stop any renovations. And it's sort of specifically designed to stop the building of a $50 million women's prison for approximately 200 women. So, and the no-cost calls is basically to stop these exorbitant fees that families and incarcerated folks have to pay when they're trying to talk to each other from prison.
Well, thank you. Yes, so, I supported the bill for the no-cost calls, and I'm hopeful that we'll get there over the finish line, we fast track it and get it done. No, exorbitant right now. If someone wants to make a call from, an inmate wants to make a call from a prison, it's really exorbitant. And the reason for that is the prisons are using it as a profit center. The profit center. They would make a contract with the company and get this money from the company. And so I'm hopeful, more than hopeful, that we'll get that through quickly. Quickly, it'll be a few months, but that's quickly in legislative change. The other bill, just to I can't recall if I signed on to co-sponsor that bill or didn't. The devil is always in the details with bills, and I'm very familiar with MCI framing. It's hundreds of years old, and one problem that the administration had with the bill that we had in the last session was that they would need to make modifications, do things, so that people were better than not, and they thought that would be restricted. So the devil's in the details. I'll look at the bill, and if I feel that it's not going to hold things up, I support it. But I'd like to see this administration. Proactively look at doing housing. I call it housing in prison for inmates. That would be much better than anything that's been built before. I mean, I know a few years ago, some senators and there may have been House members with them went to Germany to look at what they do, and I think they probably do have similar arrangements in Scandinavia. They don't look like prisons. They look more like graduate housing, graduate student housing. Thank you.
I'm only responding to what you were just saying and come with this question. But why can't we look at alternatives to these prisons? I mean, some people are there because they can't pay their bail, or they're there for some minor crime.
Sure.
We've got all these people put away. They earn no money while they're there. We put them out and say, well, now get back to work. They can't get a job, and they have no money. It's ridiculous. The whole system is ridiculous. And I don't know whether there are studies being done or what, but I would urge that rather than building more prisons, we think about what are we doing anyway.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, what's your name?
Sarah.
Sarah, thank you, Sarah.
And she's our town moderator.
Right. So Sarah, the good news is, and one thing that was being an attorney and practicing was mentioned, but one thing that wasn't mentioned was that I've been an active criminal defense attorney for over 30 years. And I will tell you that a few years ago, we had this omnibus Criminal Justice Reform Act passed through the legislature. And what did that do? I'll tell you what it did was it caused probably 95% of the people, or more than 95% of the people that would have bail set on them and then have to be in jail awaiting trial, it's gone. It's gone. I mean, if somebody gets a bail on them, it's remarkable today. Okay.
You're talking about the fees.
The bail fees.
Yeah, that's different than that.
Okay, Bill.
Gabriella is still very much. Something you really do or not?
No, I won't. I'm not taking my mask off. I just visited my 97-year-old mother-in-law, my wife, we have, so I'm keeping my mask on in this context. I'm sorry. So we passed a lot. We really changed the system remarkably a few years ago, the justice system, and bail was one of those things. We got rid of a lot. We got rid of a number of there had been a lot of statutes which required mandatory sentences. We got rid of a lot of mandatory sentences, not all of them, but a lot of them. So, I think we're continuing to make progress. There's a criminal justice caucus, we used to call it the harm reduction caucus. I've been a member of that the whole time I've been in the legislature. We'll continue to work on that. Thank you.
I have a second working microphone right here.
Oh, good.
I'm Jerry Gector. Oh, sorry. I wasn't doing that.
No, it's.
Does it work?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. At the beginning, you talked about education as an area of particular interest. I was just wondering if you could give us more details about
Sure.
what things need to be
Sure,
done.
education and area of interest. So, back in the 1970s, Western European countries decided that higher education would be like elementary school or secondary school would be free, essentially free. But we're not there. So I've been seeking to have higher education, public higher education, be free in the Commonwealth for the last 8 years. So this session, I'm partnering with a colleague, Natalie Higgins from Leominster, on a debt-free public higher ed bill, so that students can go to college at any of our 29 campuses and not graduate with debt. The Senate President, I'm sorry, the governor has talked, the Senate President Karen Spilker had spoken recently about wanting to have all the community colleges be free if you're 25 or older. I haven't talked with her. I don't know why she's putting it at 25 instead of 18 or 17. I was at Northeastern when I was 14 years old, so I don't know why she's putting an age on it. So I'll continue to work very hard to see that
You think
we
that
can
can
catch
happen?
up to the Europeans. Now, it used to be in West Germany for many years, for decades, you paid a little less than $200 administration fee, and then all your fees and it was all free after that. Now, I understand it's up to close to $2,000. But even so, think
Sure.
about it. A year of higher for $2,000. So that's what I'm doing this session on education.
That's wonderful. Do you think it'll happen?
With the fair share amendment that we passed, with that additional 1.2 billion or $2 billion of income to be split,
Nice.
so some of it to go to education, some to go to transportation. There's money there to do this.
It's great.
And each of the last couple of years during the pandemic, state revenues have been incredibly, in a normal year, we have a situation that we're $200 or $300 or $500 in the red or in the black. But the last couple of years, we've been in the black billion, over $1 billion. So if not now, when?
Yes.
Yes.
What about asylum seekers? What is the state doing with refugees and asylum seekers? And this new rule that individual congregations in different towns, we can sponsor families.
So the question is, what about asylum seekers?
Yeah.
What's the Commonwealth doing about asylum seekers? And
Refugees.
I don't know. I don't know what the Commonwealth is doing about asylum seekers. I know that, really asylum is, a federal issue. And, you know, we do have a very high number of people coming into the country every day. But, and I know so I don't know any more than you would, you know, reading the Boston Globe right now. And I think it's really, on the one hand, it's really a federal issue because, you know, only the federal government has authority to grant asylum. But I'm mindful of the fact that there are plenty of us in the Commonwealth that, you know, would like to be helpful to people coming from overseas that need assistance. Yeah. Thank you.
The people please say their names. That was Lorraine Fiore. But please say your name so everyone knows us.
I'm Alice Waugh. I'm the editor of the Lincoln Squirrel, which is the local online newspaper, sorry. As everyone knows, the newspaper industry, the local newspaper industry is pretty much dead in terms of actually covering towns. You know, they're kind of regional and online only and not very useful for people seeking information about what's going on locally. And as you also probably know, a lot of towns some local news blogs like mine are springing up and have been. And my question is, one thing that would really make all of them a lot more economically viable would be if the state permitted towns such as this to put legal notices in online newspapers only. Right now, the state law allows you to do that, but it still requires you to put the notice in a physical paper newspaper. So the little towns are putting ads in the Lowell Sun. I mean, it's ridiculous. So that would be something that would help, I think, boost local journalism, and in addition to just publishing, being able to publish that information for people to see what public hearings are coming up, to get that income from the town that they're now forced to pay to physical paper newspapers. And I think Alice Peisch filed a bill last year about that, and I don't believe it passed, but I just don't know if that's an issue that's come up for you, and if that's something you'd be willing to work on.
You need us to say here, here.
Yes. You know, I'm fully supportive of that. And, you know, if Alice, hopefully Alice refiled it, and I'm happy to co-sponsor that with her. We did have another bill to help stimulate local papers. And honestly, I can't recall what happened, you know, if it passed or didn't pass. What happened. You know, someone else had filed that. I'm sure I co-sponsored it because I was aware of it and really liked it. So anything I can do to help local news, I'm happy to do that, because I remember decades ago when, you know, the weekly local newspaper, you'd read, well, this is what happened at the select board meeting. This is what happened at the planning board meeting. There's a ZBA meeting, you know, and you'd hear, you know, you'd read, you'd know what was going on in town. And and even before those papers folded, that news left the papers. I mean, they were just skeletons of what they had.
Yeah.
So yeah, please reach out to me. Feel free.
I should have mentioned another strategy that I'm not sure which is better, that Bedford has tried. They passed their town meeting in November. They passed a home rule petition to ask the legislature to override that requirement and let them, you know, buy public ads in local papers only. But I know home rule petitions take quite a while to work their way through the system. But I don't know if you knew about that, but that's another.
Carmen, could you repeat that? 'Cause
I'm sorry.
We are also
You know,
recording.
you're
Sorry about that.
I meant to add earlier that another strategy that's been tried in at least one town in Bedford, they have a town meeting in November. They just recently passed a home rule petition asking the state legislature to, I guess, override that law about how it has to be public notices have to be in a physical paper newspaper. And I don't know if that's a good strategy or not, but you know, that's another thing that's kind of on the horizon. And I know home rule petitions take quite a while to work their way through the system, but I just thought, you know, you should be aware of it if you didn't know about that. I'm wondering if you know of any other towns that are trying something like that.
Thank you. I'm not aware of other towns trying to do that, but I'm supportive of that, and I really, you know, reach out to me, and
Okay.
I'm happy to keep an eye on that and work with you.
Thank you.
Well,
I'm Steve Cropper, and this comes from the background of labor activists in the family going back generations. We have 200,000 illegal immigrants in the state, and we're about 100,000 units, housing units short. And it seems like there's a number of things we're doing that are shooting ourselves in the foot with respect to our own population. The other one is labor wages are rising now, especially among our low income, which some of us think is a good thing. And yet there are calls saying we have labor shortages. So by having licenses for illegals, and now we're thinking about in-state tuition for illegals, and somewhere down the road, somebody will suggest voting for illegals. Can we put our own population first in terms of housing? Can we put our own population first in terms of wages? And once we solve that problem, once everybody gets the American dream, then we can welcome immigrants. I know in Lincoln, we benefit from legal immigration. We don't have to pay them decent wages. They disappear when they get hurt. And as a progressive, I think what we're doing on immigration isn't putting our own population first. So I'm particularly interested in the opinion on the driver's license, the in-state tuition, and what next.
So I will tell you that up until the Trump administration, for decades, young people, maybe even older people, but young people especially, came over every summer and worked on Cape Cod in restaurants and hotels and motels. And they earned money, and then they went back to Ireland. And the people who hired them were really happy because it's profitable. And those of us who don't live on the Cape, who visited, were really happy because we could dine at a restaurant or stay at a place. And then during the Trump administration, that stopped. Wouldn't let those people come over from Ireland. So you're right, we do have 200,000. We may have 250,000 folks in the Commonwealth right now that don't have the documentation to, under our immigration laws, be here. And what are they doing? They're working. They're working. Their unemployment rate is like probably close to nothing. They're working. And a lot of them are doing work that the people who were born here or moved from another state don't care to do. So I remember when Mitt Romney lived in Belmont and was governor, he had a landscaping crew, just like a lot of us have landscaping crews come over, because we realized, gee, they can do a better job than we can, and and what we're earning, we can pay them, and we're better off, And come to find out, these were undocumented people, mowing his lawn. So my feeling is that the people that are here that have an immigration problem, they're doing work that needs to be done, and if they weren't doing that work, we'd be suffering. Not only are they doing the work, they're paying taxes. They are paying.
We might have to pay people decent wages instead of the subsidies that we benefit. Those of us in wealthy towns.
Wages, I agree with you. We need to pay decent wages. So, just on January 1st, we got to the point of saying, okay, Massachusetts, the minimum wage is $15. That's really not enough. It should probably be $20 or more, but certainly $20. I mean, $20 may not be enough, but certainly 15 is. There was a time in your and my lifetime when we were young, much younger, when people could work a minimum wage job 40 hours a week or 50 hours a week and put a roof over their head and food on the table. That's not the case now. It needs to become the case. Was there another?
Really, the big question was.
Could you use a mic, please?
Oh, excuse me.
Because-
I think there are no jobs Americans won't do, but there are wages and working conditions they shouldn't have to accept. And so I just want to make sure we put those people first, because they're the people who elected Trump. The reason we got Trump as a president was there were lots of people who weren't taken care of. And we want to make sure they have jobs and housing. Those should be our first priority. And I guess the particular legislative question is, there's an E-Verify bill, which I think has just been filed, where the state would require that any contractor verify citizenship. So you couldn't have an illegal person working for a state contractor. The question is whether you support E-Verify at the state level.
you know, honestly, I don't know that I would support it or wouldn't support it. I really haven't thought about it. It's the first I've heard of it. I mean, I'm aware that, you know, people that are here that don't have the paperwork necessary, the crime rate among that population is less than the crime rate among the rest of us, you know, the hard workers. Yeah, that's a really good question, and I don't know. I'll look at it. And, thank you.
Thank you for considering the question.
Other.
Hi, I'm Linda Lee, on the planning board of Lincoln. But actually I'm asking you a question based, my day job is a psychiatrist in Boston area. And what I see is that mental illness in our state is in a real crisis. If anyone has taken a family member to an emergency room, it is so traumatic because the patients stay there for days on end, and children too. And the other thing is that once they get in the hospital, if they need long-term care, it takes over a year to get into a state hospital. And I'm wondering if you could support building more state beds in this state or something to alleviate the mental health crisis.
Well, thank you for that question. You know, we've had, because we only have about 75 pediatric psych beds in the whole state. We have situations where a child is in the emergency room for a week. I heard of one instance where a child was in the emergency room for 2 weeks, waiting for a psych bed in a hospital to open up for them to go to. And, you know, it's just inexcusable. So I've been aware of this problem and treatment. So I'm very aware of, for example, substance disorder treatment, you know, not enough beds historically. And for the time I've been in the legislature, the last 8 years, I've always supported and advocated for more beds, and we've gotten one. You know, we've gotten one. So this session, I filed the legislation. So I'm absolutely more supportive of more beds, and you know, so what we have to do, I believe, is we have to give the necessary incentive to hospitals and to other medical vendors to create these beds. If they can do it and pay the bills, then they'll do it. If they can't, they won't. We've got to make the financial incentives and have it done. I agree with you. One bill that I found in this area, realizing that we don't have enough staff, enough people to do what needs to be done, is currently, you know, people that have substance use disorder, they've got to get to their primary care physician. They've got to get to a physician to get a prescription. And that's completely understandable. But what I found legislation so that pharmacists can partner with physicians and be able to, you know, provide medications, partnering with those physicians, you know, provide them in situations where, you know, the person hasn't been to see the doctor that week or that month, but there is supervision from the physician to the pharmacist. I think this might be the case in some other countries, but it's certainly we have, I know that in other countries, pharmacists do a lot more than they do in this country. So that would enable a lot of people that require that medication to be able to get it rather than not get it and continue to, you know. Well, thank you. Yeah, no, I'm 1000% supportive of it. I had a call a few months ago. Someone called me and said their child had been in the ER. I can't remember if it was 4 days or a week. You know, it was a long time. Now, I was able to get that child in a bed the next day, okay? Because I knew who to call and a bed became available, all right? But that doesn't help the situation, the big situation. Thank you.
It doesn't help the
I
average.
think Paul has a question.
Thank you. Paul Shore, Also an attorney for 40 years, but recently retired. And one of my town roles is chair of the Green Energy Committee, whose mission is to try to fight climate change, essentially, help people both individually and the town do it. And also sometimes we suggest the town add community to the state legislature or legislators. I know I've met with you on this stuff before, and wearing other hats, and you've been perceptively helpful in time to find, so everybody should just know that. Climate is one of the top handful issues the Lincoln Town and our committee has prioritized. Just want to let you know that. And so I've got a little bit of preliminary comment, then a question. This might be a little wonky, so if you say, I don't know this detail, I understand that. But kudos to the legislature in the last couple of sessions for passing the roadmap bill. And then the last year's bill made good progress on green and grid, somewhat by encouraging wind, right? And on transportation front by encouraging EVs, but didn't really find a way to do a lot on housing. That's one of the big three sources of emissions, right? So I know that activists will be pushing something to help decarbonize existing houses, which of course is the big challenge. All the new ones get built, of course, should be, you know, net zero, hopefully. And I think even as we address the housing shortage, you know, the evidence from the even Baker's agency supports that it's not more expensive to build a green. Like total life of ownership cost is equal or less than heat pumps instead of gas furnaces. But decarbonizing these buildings is tough. My impression is that we could get some ARPA money to use it to help advance that. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about how that might get done. So I'm not sure if it's been figured out yet.
You're talking about switching, taking houses.
Yeah, I mean, no, how it gets switched and start getting some funding to support the expensive job of decarbonizing existing houses.
Thank you. Just comment quickly on what the other gentleman said. So the construction costs of building a house that's net zero, and just a couple of years ago, we're at the point where, and had been for some time before that, maybe 10% more than normal construction costs. So for 10% more than normal construction costs, you could have a house that you didn't have to, that would, the cost of heating and air conditioning, it would be nominal. When I say nominal, I mean, I'll give you an example. A fellow who had such a house built in Austria, Germany, he had to turn the heat on 3 times in 15 years. And that was the architect. The architect who built that house was the same architect that built the first net zero house in Massachusetts, in Shrewsbury, for State Representative Beaton, who later was our environmental secretary, energy secretary for a while. But converting a house, I think what we can do is we can help get funding for people to be able to put more insulation in, and different windows, and also heat pumps, so they can use those heat pumps with electricity that's generated cleanly. And so now we have, I think we can do that, and we do have money that we can put into that area, and I think we will. I'm supportive of that. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I hear these priorities, and most of our priorities are being brought up by people in this room, and we're not all in agreement about all of the ways to do this. I know about 20 of us wrote in support of the immigration driving bill, because so we all have different views, and I think it's awesome that we're bringing them up because we need to hear from everybody. But as I hear all these priorities, these things we really need to do, and I know we have some money now. How are they going to be prioritized to hit the most important things, as opposed to just I won't say business as usual, but you know what I mean? That how are we going to use this wonderful opportunity where we have money to do the most critically important things? What is the mechanism for doing that?
So the mechanism, the legislative mechanism, is that about a month from now, or maybe even more than a month from now, the committees, membership, people will be assigned to committees in the House and the Senate. Right now in the House, we have Ways and Means, Rules, and Bills in third reading are operating with the members that they had from the last session on order of the Speaker. And all the other committees, they really don't exist. They haven't been, we haven't received assignments. So those committees will be formed probably a month from now or so. And once they're formed, then they'll be receiving bills. And you say, well, what's going to get done? There's all these different things that get done. It's advocacy, it's advocacy, it's advocacy. And quite frankly, it's also, you know, the big three, the House Speaker, the Speaker, the Senate President, and the Governor. Those three people, you know, what do they want to see happen? And so it's up to us to influence their thoughts. This is what needs to be happened. Now, I will tell you that Speaker Mariano is open. You know, he's fairly open to ideas. I remember a friend who chaired a committee last session said to me that, you know, I asked him about a bill, and that was in his committee, and I said, well, you know, what about this? I really want to see this bill move. He said, well, you know, I talked to the Speaker about it, and the Speaker said to me, well, hey, you look into it and tell me what you think, which is refreshing, which is good. You know, it's good. Rather than okay, this is what you're going to do. So it's advocacy. Yeah.
I just want to ask, I think a few people arrived with questions that they would like to ask and perhaps have not had a chance to do so. And I'm wondering if you would want to identify yourselves. Anybody? All right, then I'll ask mine. just a general question, but what do you need to hear from us? What can we do to help you do the job that you want to do? And you've heard a lot of things that are important to you people here today, and you've heard that there's some disagreement on some of them. But how can we interact with you in a way that is effective?
So if you feel strongly about something, you favor something, you know, it's a good idea to send me an email and say, you know, I really support this. I'd really like to see this happen. I'd really like this to move along. And a lot of times, a person will say, well, gee, I know Carmine Gentile. I know this is a priority for him, and so I really don't need to reach out and tell him how I feel about it because we're on the same page together. Well, certainly if we've talked about it or emailed back and forth in the last month or so, that's fine. But otherwise, you know, feel free to, if we haven't talked about it, we haven't communicated about it in the last month or so, then yeah, reach out to me, send me an email, and let me know. Gee, I hope you'll co-sponsor this bill, or I'd like to see what's going on with that, and because even getting word from people that are on the same page, well, then I can turn around and I can say, truthfully, I've got a boatload of my constituents that this is what they want to see happen. I'm not guessing. You can also leave a voicemail message. Emails, a lot easier to deal with. You can leave a voicemail message. Once in a while, we get a letter that's either typed or handwritten. And those get a lot of attention. And you may actually get a handwritten letter or typed letter back. Otherwise, we get postcards.
Tricia has a question.
And one last thing I left out was certainly if you have the ability or the flexibility, you meet with me, and you can meet with me online. We can, Zoom. A few years ago before COVID, he said Zoom. I was thinking of a children's program, but if I was in the business community, maybe I would have realized that was going on for a long time. But we can Zoom. We can talk on the phone. And I have office hours every month. Sign up for that. get together for 20 minutes on Zoom. But if you're not able to make the office hours, we can talk on Zoom or meet on another occasion.
Just a quick question about, do you have a newsletter that you put out?
Do I have a newsletter that I put out? Yeah, no, I know, a lot of people do, and right now I haven't had a newsletter. That's something that we can develop, I suppose.
Thanks.
My staff would work on the newsletter. My campaign manager, treasurer, or wife would send it out on whatever that's.
I will say his office hours are this Friday, so if you want to shoot us an email or a call, we can set you up to.
Those are in local?
Over Zoom.
I got you.
Yes.
I know that, I can speak.
Wait a minute, Andy, let's.
I
Can you get
know
the mic?
that, don't
Okay. He needs his mic. I know he got his mic.
I know you don't know yet about committee assignments, but what's the most likely committee or committees that you will be on?
Well, for the last 8 years, I've been on the committee, one of the 4 committees. Every year, I get assigned to 4 committees. 4 committees, and maybe a 5th committee, normally 4 committees. And Elder Affairs, that's one of those committees every year, every session, the last 4 sessions. So high likelihood I'll be on Elder Affairs. Higher education, perhaps the ENRA, the environment, natural resources and agriculture committee. I honestly don't know, what other committee or committees I would be on. It's interesting. It's very common if someone's appointed a chairman, a chair, they may be appointed. It's very common that they get appointed to chair a committee that they know nothing about. It's in the House, it's more the norm. And nonetheless, they can do a fantastic job. I mean, I think, real seriously, in the energy, Jeff Roy was our energy chair last session. He did a fantastic job, And, the speaker joked about, he really wasn't conversant in that when he was appointed. So it's like.
Which of those would be your priority?
So, which would be my priority? I'll talk to the speaker about it, and it's up to him, but I would certainly, I really have a great healthcare finance, higher education. Each of the chairs that I've had in Elder Affairs the last 4 sessions, the next session they go on to chair another committee, and those other committees, they're all great committees. So I'd be very happy to get a chair in a month from now. If I do, that's great. If I don't, soldier on.
Any other final question? Well, let's have a round of applause for